Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding today's hearing on the issue of human trafficking in our major cities. And just a brief moment of personal privilege to thank Texas Southern University, Dean Hawley, thank you, the Dean of the Thurgood Marshall School of Law, to the Dean of this school, and to the Dean of the School of Education and the Dean of the School of Public Affairs, Mr. Lorenz Snowden, and the President Rudley, and the Regents. Let me thank you for the hospitality that you have offered us at a very historic institution. Might I also thank and welcome again the many witnesses who accepted our invitation to be here and for the work we've done together. Finally, Chairman has already acknowledged Joanne Herring. He did not give her vitae, but all I will say to you is that she was on the early front lines of saving boys and girls in Afghanistan and in this nation from the devastation of sexual exploitation and exploitation as it relates to their human rights. So welcome, Ms. Herring, and your very special guest as well. I'm the ranking member of the Border Security and Maritime Security, and have studied this issue from the connection in the Judiciary Committee to the fact that people traffic across borders. And I could not imagine being silent on this issue, and particularly knowing the front lines that Texas and Texas law enforcement and social and civic leaders are involved in this issue. Knowing the magnitude of the problem in the state of Texas and the Houston area in particular, I requested this hearing shortly after my colleague from Texas became chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security, and again, I thank him. I'm very pleased that he agreed to my request and that we could come together on a bipartisan basis today to convene the hearing. Again, I also thank the ranking member, Mr. Thompson, and his staff for their cooperation with the majority on this hearing. I also appreciate my other colleagues for joining us, and I welcome them to my congressional district. We are fortunate to have an extremely knowledgeable and passionate group of law enforcement officials, experts, and advocates participating in the hearing as witnesses, and I look forward to a robust discussion today. Finally, I want to express again appreciation for this particular committee being broadcast on the Homeland Security website, and it will become a part of the committee's record for the 113th Congress. To understand why I believe so strongly that the Committee on Homeland Security should hold this hearing in Houston, you just have to turn on the news yesterday or pick up today's paper. Yesterday morning, law enforcement officials raided a stash house in Southeast Houston and found more than 100 people, in fact 115 people. 19 of them are juveniles, all presumed to be in the United States without documentation, being kept inside in squalid conditions. Although the investigation is not complete and there is not a suggestion yet of human trafficking, we note that there were 19 juveniles, and we don't know the destinations of any of those who have been smuggled. What were they here for? What were they intending to do? Among the group were a number of women, including at least one of whom who is pregnant, but we do know a number of children. While all the circumstances surrounding this situation are not yet known, it is obvious that criminal organizations are trafficking or smuggling large groups of people through our community, putting their victims' welfare at risk. We see these tragic news stories all too frequently in our community. For example, a story from January of this year about a notorious Port of Houston area cantina that functioned for years as a center for human trafficking and prostitution. Or another story from earlier this year where a Houston area trafficking ring had been bringing people into the country illegally from Mexico and Central America and sending them to work at restaurants for 12 hours a day, 6 hours a day, for very little money. Or a story from last fall where federal agents arrested suspects in connection with an alleged sex trafficking ring in Houston that prostituted underage, undocumented girls from Mexico who were locked up and beaten by their traffickers. As a large city strategically located near the border, a major port and a critical transportation corridors, Houston is an attractive target for human trafficking organizations. The statistics support this unfortunate fact. For example, approximately 25% of human trafficking cases in the United States are located in Texas, and most of those occur in Houston. One of our witnesses today will tell of her prostitution and how it led her to the introduction to human trafficking. In recent years, 30% of calls received from the National Human Trafficking Hotline were out of Texas. The U.S. Department of Justice has identified the I-10 corridor as the #1 trafficking route in the U.S. One of every 3 runaways in Texas is lured into sex trafficking within 48 hours of leaving home. Nationally, the federal government estimates as many as 17,500 people are trafficked to this country each year, but reliable estimates are hard to come by due to the covert nature of the crime and underreporting of victims, which can lead to the scourge of modern-day slavery, where people are held against their will to perform service. There are likely far more individuals being exploited by traffickers in places where they cannot be readily identified or counted. Exacerbating this problem is the fact that many trafficked victims come from the most vulnerable populations: children, women, and the undocumented. Understanding the scope and seriousness of the human trafficking problem in Houston and across Texas and throughout the country, the important question remains: how can we fix this? Clearly, it will take cooperation from all stakeholders to address the complex issues involved. Legislators, law enforcement officers, healthcare professionals, victims assistance organizations, and advocacy groups all have a vital role to play. We have brought together these stakeholders today to testify about their current efforts, as well as what more needs to be done to address the scourge of human trafficking. And as a senior member of the Homeland Security Committee, I'm particularly interested in hearing from the witness from the U.S. Immigration and Customs, ICE, from his agency's effort to combat human trafficking and what Congress can do more. I believe Homeland Security should be front and center on the front lines of this crucial scourge to eliminate it. I thank the chairman for coming to offer us a frank discussion, and we are in, as we support and recognize my colleague on the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Poe. We work together on this issue and his legislation dealing with the criminality of it. I believe it is also important to have the Homeland Security Committee have its stake and be a stakeholder as well. We are drafting, as we speak, an omnibus bill dealing with a number of issues to reinforce those frontliners to stop human trafficking once and for all in its tracks. Because as Americans, we simply cannot allow human trafficking, a form of modern-day slavery, to exist in our country. Again, I thank the chairman for holding today's hearing. It's my pleasure to join you, and my colleagues, I especially thank you for your presence here today, and I yield back my time.
I thank the